Carl Van Vulture here. Today we have the ghost of Claude McKay. Now Claude, tell me about your early life, where were you born, and who raised you?
Well, Carl, first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm really enjoying my time. I was born in Jamaica in 1889. I believe the town was called Clarendon. My parents' names were Hannah and Thomas. They were farmers, and we were fairly wealthy for a Jamaican family. My brother was a role model in my life. He taught me everything I know today, and it was then, I believe I was about 10 or 11, that I started writing poetry. Walter also was a big influence in my life.
Who was Walter?
Walter Jekyll was his name. He encouraged me to keep on doing what I love to do, writing poetry. Walter loved it when I wrote in my own native Jamaican dialects. It was a blast. And Walter even helped me publish my first novel in 1912.
Okay, after your first book was published, what did you do with your life next?
Well, after I wrote my book, I decided to move to the United States. I went to Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, and the racism I encountered really surprised me. You know, it really changed my perspective of this country. I actually moved to South Carolina, so you can imagine it was pretty tense there. Many places I went were segregated, and shortly after I arrived here in the U.S., I left to go to Kansas State. I didn't really like Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute. It was too military-oriented, and it just didn't settle well with me. I really enjoyed Kansas State, though, and it really influenced my career. I then moved to New York and married Elaine.
You loved Elaine?
Oh, yes, very much. She was my childhood sweetheart. I then started working for a newspaper. It was called The Liberator, I think. It was then I started publishing some of my most famous works, including If We Must Die.
Now, you were known to have some extreme political view. Tell me about it.
I knew you'd bring this up, Carl. Well, you see, I believe in communism, but I never really formally joined the party. I was also involved with some extreme African-American groups who were unhappy with this country, as you can imagine. I was part of the Socialist Revolution, and that impacted me a lot. We founded the African Blood Brotherhood, which sort of evolved into a communist movement, you know. Then I left for London shortly after.
What did you do in London?
Well, Carl, I arrived in London in 1919. I really began to become involved in politics in Europe. I went to many conventions and met lots of people. I then became a journalist for the London Daily Herald. Some thought of me as the first black journalist in London. Then myself and a group of people established the Communist Party of Great Britain. I then posted many poems in various newspapers and magazines.
Then you left London, correct?
Correct. In 1928, I believe, I came back to America and began to live in Harlem. I then wrote my most famous novel, Home to Harlem. My novel was read by many, and it depicted the intense, shocking nightlife of the city. People were hooked to my book. Although the book had its supporters, it also had its naysayers. W.E.B. Du Bois, one of my childhood heroes, criticized the book for its intense depiction of the life of African Americans.
Did you continue to make books after Home of Harlem?
Yeah, after Home of Harlem, I wrote a few. Banjo was one, Banana Bottom. Banjo was actually about the French, and how they treated their African Americans, or actually Africans in their colonies. In Banjo, I described African Americans as I saw them, without sugarcoating things, similar to Zora Neale Hurston. I also wrote Gingertown, A Long Safe from Home, and Harlem, Negro Metropolis.
So then what?
Well, I began to separate from communism. I doubted it, and I began to convert to Christianity. I I officially joined the Roman Catholic Church in 1944, but unfortunately, little did I know I was on my last legs of life. I died from a heart attack in 1949. I was only 59.
Okay, thank you folks for watching me talking to Claude McKay, and we'll join you next time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.